My name is Dayle Wastasecoot. I'm from Manitoba. I'm Swampy Cree. My mom grew up in Churchill, Manitoba, and her parents grew up in York Factory First Nation. I consider myself Indigenous, even though I'm only a little bit, I guess. A little bit. But I do identify as Native, and my son is even less, according to blood quantum, but I want him to identify with it as well. My last name is Wastasecoot, and it's Swampy Cree. In English, when our names were anglicized, it was translated literally to bright nose, and that's because the name bright nose, Wastasecoot in Cree, was given to my great grandfather, who was an expert tracker and led his hunting team home in a blizzard. Emerson's full name is Emerson Wallace Muskwa Wastasecoot, which is a mouthful, but Muskwa, it means bear in Cree. Emerson was born on June 29th, 2015 by C-section. That was a little bit of a horror story, but we survived and we're doing good. I hope that Emerson will identify as Native. I plan to have an open dialogue with my son about what has happened to our people, and to not keep secrets because he's too young. Because I think you can understand what has happened to us at almost any age. Growing up, I knew that I was Native. It wasn't until I was about 11 or 12 that I realized that I looked like a little white girl out of place type of deal. But I was raised with traditional beliefs, and I would go to powwows and sun dances and go to big drum circles, so I felt very connected to that side of me. I first learned about the Indian residential school from my mom. She was always 100% open about it. She didn't wait until I was a certain age. It was always, our people were sent to these schools and this is what happened to them, and it wasn't a secret.
Did your mom go to residential school?
My mom was the only one of 9 siblings who didn't go to residential school.
And both of your grandparents?
Both of my grandparents went to day camps. So despite the horrific things that happened to my family in the Indian residential school system in Canada, they are still considered successful. My aunt-in-law, she has her PhD, and my mom is on the cusp of receiving her PhD. Due to colonial settlers taking away the medicines that my grandparents used, they had unregulated amounts of children. We used to have medicines for birth control, and we were very careful about our family planning. So my mom's mom, my grandma, had 16 babies, and only 10 of them lived to adulthood. My mom was the last one, and she wasn't supposed to be born. They had told my mom's mom, my grandma, that if she had any more, that she would probably die. So my mom is a miracle, and I'm very blessed to have her. So you've seen the 2 photos of my grandparents. Those are really the only photos we have. Occasionally some will come up on Facebook because people will find them after they've been hiding in their basement for God knows how long. But I cherish those photos because my mom's had them up for a few years now, and I always feel like their presence is around, and they're watching and hoping for the best for me and my family. Mm-hmm. A video in the Canadian Archives was recently found by my family, and it showcases my grandparents basically being drunk at a bar. It was really disheartening to see them like that, because in my mind I only go based on the pictures. I don't know what they were like in person. Although I did meet them, I was under 2 years old, and then they passed away. So to see them in that light is upsetting. I wish they had actually taken video of them sober. The effects on my family from the residential school system are still felt today because I don't have a very close relationship with my family members. I know them and I love them and they love me, but we'll never have the bond that other families seem to have, non-native families. Of course, not every family is perfect, but I'll never know them as if they hadn't gone to residential school. And I blame that on the Indian residential school system for taking away parts of them that they'll never get back. So I believe in the traditional ways of healing and the 7 grandfather teachings. But what I connected most with was the Sweat Lodge. And I think it was in 2011, there was a story about a reservation in Quebec where they came to a woman's backyard and tore down her sweat lodge in front of her. And it was hard to hear about because I thought that we had gotten past that, you know? I thought that we had overcome the illegality and the criminalization of the sweat lodge and the traditional ways of healing, the potlucks, the sundances, the powwows, the gathering in groups of more than 3 people. So I remember when I heard that story, I was very upset. Just made me feel like we are stuck in a vicious cycle of intergenerational trauma, and it's going to take probably the next 7 generations for us to come back full force.
Before you today to offer an apology to former students of Indian residential schools. The treatment of children in Indian residential schools is a sad chapter in our history.
I remember watching it on TV and just feeling like they were making a mockery of us all over again. I feel a lot differently about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission because it wasn't made by Canada. It's actually an independent group with a little bit of funding from Canada, I believe, but not from the government itself. So I thought that the work they were doing was more valid, if that makes sense. To me, reconciliation means healing our nations and becoming one again, and finding a way to stop intergenerational trauma to keep it growing for the next generations. So the TRC impacted me in a few different ways. The first and most important, I think, was that it wasn't entirely beneficial. It was, like for some people the money was a good thing because they could put it towards good things. And then I think for most of the people who received it, they used it to drink and drug and just to soothe their sorrows. Like, one of my biggest dreams is to become involved with elders and learn about the medicines in depth. I hope that Emerson will embrace his native culture. I know it might be a bit more difficult for him to feel accepted by the community because there is still a stigma about having light skin. There are people in the community who do think that if you're light skinned, you have all the privilege of being white. So you should just act white and belong to that. So I want him to identify as Native because he is, and I hope that he gets involved with the community as well. I'm going to get him his spirit name and his colors, and I would like to introduce him to the world of sweats and sundances and powwows and Indian tacos. His grandma's fluent in the language. I'm trying to learn my language, and he is possibly going to a daycare where they'll be speaking Cree to him full time, so I'm very excited about that. So I feel like because Emerson is not status, he is missing out on the rights that are owed to him by Canada. I don't believe that it's fair for there to be a cutoff point on status. The role that non-indigenous people play in reconciliation is actually taking the time to learn about Canada's Native people and North America's Native people, actually basically the world's Native people. And I think immigrants can play a big part in reconciliation just by learning and becoming involved. So my mom has been on this journey with her PhD doing memory mapping, which is basically taking a place setting and listing your memories of that place. So for her, some very traumatic things happened in her childhood that she wrote down in the memory map of her place. And she shares this very publicly because her story, she knows that her story empowers others. And I'm just proud of my mom. To me, she's brilliant. To a lot of people, she's brilliant. And I think that she can help with reconciliation. I do look like a little white girl most of the time when I don't have this magnificent tan. Okay, I'll stop that.
That's funny. It's good.
Okay. He's made big lofty promises. That's all he's done. I mean, he's cute, but can he deliver?
So, I guess the next few questions are more general, not specifically related to TRC, but so the first one, you can record her laughing, please.
I'll go TRC. That's terrible.
What does your mom say about crying?
You should do it. And I'm your mom, so you can cry in front of me.